Thank you guys all for your patience and waiting for us. If you guys know anyone who was planning on joining via Zoom, feel free to text them that we're up and live, and then I'll just go ahead and jump into it. So as I started off, today's topic for the Lunch and Learn is tools to build wealth, and then discuss a little bit about what wealth is. In short, it's what your assets are minus liabilities. And so assets kind of describe anything that you own, and then liabilities are debts that you might have, credit card bills, student loans, that money that you owe your aunt, or something that you got to pay back to your kids or something like that. That would be a form of liabilities. Student loans. If we can go to the next slide. So just a little bit about me. Most of you guys know me already, but from San Diego, grew up at 31st Street. I have my education is in pastoral work, so I have a BA in ministerial theology and then a master's in divinity. And pastored for a few years, and then in 22 made the shift to being a financial advisor. And so part of the shift is just the desire to still be able to help people. Actually, my grandparents in St. Louis, they had gifted me like an investment fund for my graduation from Oakwood. So around 2015, 2016, I started meeting with my own personal financial advisor. And it really opened up my eyes to the possibilities when you have someone who's managing your wealth, who has the expertise, who's able to answer questions for you. And I was probably, on average, like one of the youngest people to have, So, I mean, you just need to open up an account with them, but it's not something that's normal for someone of that age. And it's really because my grandparents, they had put money aside when I was like 1 or something, and they just let it sit. And so for me, that just really opened up my eyes because I've seen, I've had family members who work, so I know what it means to be able to earn money when you go to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You get your paycheck once a month, every 2 weeks. Like, that's very familiar. I had friends in school who owned businesses, so I understand the concept of being a business owner and you have employees, and then from that profit you make money. But the investment side was something new for me to really conceptualize, that if you put your money in the right place and you invest it, at the right time, I was going to school, I wasn't even thinking about the money. And lo and behold, it had grown, to, 7 times, by the time I had received it. And so it just really opened up my personal eyes. And so that knowledge and that experience is something that I wanted to be able to share with others. Fully licensed, I have my Series 7, 66 Life and Health, and just recently got my APMA. And all of those numbers and letters essentially mean that I'm qualified on the national and state level to be able to give financial advice, to be able to get compensated for it, to be able to manage individuals' money on a discretionary and non-discretionary level. And then Life and Health is just the opportunity to be able to provide protection for individuals in the form of insurance or annuities, if someone's case requires it. And then just some personal things. I'm a member of a hiking group up in LA, Black Men Hike LA, and so I spend a lot of time hiking on a monthly basis. Also enjoy time out in nature, traveling, spending time with family and friends, and some specialties are working with those who are either in retirement or close to retirement, because I know how critical a point that is in someone's financial journey. Young professionals who are looking at establishing their finances for the long term, and then also business owners. If we go to the next slide, this is the team that I work on, Frederick Family Wealth Advisors. And so our office is located in Pasadena, but we have clients all throughout California and throughout the country. We're licensed in I think like 48 states or so. So able to serve anyone wherever they might live in the U.S. or international, as long as you have like a U.S.-based address. And between the advisors, there's 5 of us who are advisors, over 50 years of experience, and collectively as a team, we manage almost $500 million in assets under management. And so A very experienced team. I'm the newest advisor on this team, but John Frederick's been doing it for 35 years. Other individuals on the team, nearly 10 years. And then we have a great support staff for those who like come in person or meet virtually. And the name of our practice is Frederick Family Wealth Advisors, but if you go to the next slide, we're a part of Ameriprise Financial. So we're a network of advisors throughout the country. Ameriprise Financial is one of the largest broker-dealers as far as financial firms that assist people. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. If you look, we're a publicly traded company in the financial sector. Some things that I'm really proud of is, during the 2008 financial crisis, our firm didn't have to accept a government bailout, and so we were able to, go through it without receiving funds. If you're familiar with the money market, it's essentially like a cash, slush fund, more or less. And during that time period, money markets froze, which, generally speaking, money markets aren't supposed to freeze. You're always supposed to have access to it. And so our firm, we had enough money in our reserves that if any clients needed to access our money market, we were able to, use that money and then got it repaid later. And so saying all of that to say, it's a very conservative company when it comes to our own finances, but progressive and forward thinking when it comes to servicing individuals. And so when you think about money, it's a very personal, touchy thing. And so you just really want to, share that I'm very grateful to be working with the company that I do because there's people who have been doing it for tons of years. The firm just celebrated its 130th year in existence, started in 1894.
Do you have cards?
I don't have physical cards on myself, but I can give everyone my information. Yeah. So what are we going to learn today? The first thing that we're going to be going over is identifying and understanding your financial goals. And so I think everyone has a cell phone out. If you are able to write just your goals in your notes, or if you brought pen and paper, just really want at some point for us to be able to identify what your own personal financial goals are. And then the second thing is we're going to describe the steps to create a budget, and then also explain the importance of an emergency fund. And then the last one is we're going to go over tips for smart investing. Again, really want to make sure it's conversational, whether you're on the Zoom or you're here in person. Feel free to raise your hand or shout out a question, and we'll dialogue as we're going through it, or I can answer questions towards the end. Next slide. So starting off with financial goals. This is a list of some financial goals. Can some of you guys, what we see, we have saving goals, investing, debt reduction, retirement planning, protection planning, estate planning. Does anything on this list jump out to anyone? Is there a goal listed that is of interest to yourself? Savings. Retirement. I hear retirement. Estate. What was the other one? Investing.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Saving. Okay.
What is protection planning?
So protection planning is, in essence, insurance. So it's protecting, for most people, the biggest asset is their ability to earn income. And so if you're making, $100,000 a year and you have 20 years left, that's $2 million. Yeah, that's $2 million of income that could be generated by your ability to work. And so whether, that's disability insurance or life insurance if someone passes, think about couples. If one of the partners passes and you're a dual income household, you might be faced with moving out of your house or taking your kid out of school or, restructuring your budget if you don't have that two streams. So that's what protection planning is. Could you go back and more and another?
And estate planning is
another and back one more. Okay. And so estate planning is essentially like if you own a house, making sure that those things are, in a trust or a will where it goes. There's more to it too, like having a health directive. A lot of people don't do that, but you should really have a health directive on file. You should know where all of your important documents are, have those things recorded, make sure that your insurance is up to date. So that all goes into estate planning. So for the purposes of today though, we're going to be just looking at these top three. Savings goals, investing, and debt reduction. Of course, if there's any questions on some of the other ones, or if you want to go more in depth, happy to share my information, and then could talk in detail. And then I'll also be speaking twice more this year. So depending on how this conversation goes, maybe one of the other ones might switch to a topic that is of great interest today for you guys. So the three goals that we're going over today: savings goals, investing goal, and debt reduction. Here's an example of a savings goal. So you want to have your emergency fund, prepped and ready so that if something comes up, your car gets a flat tire, a family member is sick and you have to go take care of them for a few months. You want to be able to have something to be able to pull from it, or maybe your house is, has a leak, and even though it doesn't rain much in San Diego, when you have that leak and when it's raining, it's, it doesn't matter how often it happens. If it happens once a year, you want to make sure that the leak is plugged. So those are examples of savings goals, or, you want to pass some funds on to a family member, so you want to invest it so that it's growing and outpacing inflation. And then debt reduction, it's, unfortunately can be so easy to, have to finance things, and when you're not able to pay those off on a monthly basis, on a regular basis, that debt accumulates. And I have rarely heard of, a credit card company just forgiving it out of the goodwill of their own heart. They give you the money, they want the money in return. And so, just understanding that.
So it's okay to have your emergency fund and your savings goal, of course, because someone said something to me recently, like, I went to my savings. It was there, but that's what it's there for.
Yeah, your emergency.
You want to have more so that you don't wipe it out.
Correct, yeah. So when you're looking at goals, we talked about, some different types, but right now looking at the time essence of your goal. So there's short-term goals, intermediate or medium, and then long-term goals. And, when I'm doing financial planning or working with clients, and one of the biggest questions is, what do I do? What should I invest the money in? Like, one of the first questions that I always look to answer is, what's your financial goal? Back to that slider, like what your actual goal is for that money really determines where you're going to do with that money. If you're looking to buy a house next year, that's different than investing for retirement in 20 years. And so a part of understanding the financial goal is knowing how long you have to reach that goal, whether it's short term, within a year, medium, 1 to 10, or long term. Because the longer it is, the more, the ability that you have to take a little bit more risk in order to achieve that goal. I wouldn't, if you're planning for retirement, I wouldn't put it in a bond, because or something that's very conservative, or very, not going to grow much, because it's going to maybe match inflation, or it's not going to grow to the full potential that you have or that you would need for a long-term goal. So just some examples: emergency, minor improvements. A medium is maybe a vehicle or paying off debts, and then there's some examples for a long-term one.
What was the long term?
If you could go back. So long-term is just 10 years or later. So it could be a variety. What's a long-term goal for you, or what's a long-term goal for you varies from person to person. When I was 18, a long-term goal would have been buying a house. But now, hopefully it's medium. I'm 30, so hopefully it happens in the next 10 years or less. Retirement is for sure a long-term goal, but I'm sure there's people in here who maybe want it to be a short-term or medium goal, right?
I'm already retired.
Okay, so then it's definitely not a long-term goal for you. And so all those things.
I'm just trying to make sure I stay within my budget and keep up.
Yes, so and that that goes to budgeting and making sure that, and even in retirement, like if you're your life expectancy is for like another 30 years, everything's not going to be invested short term, because you could put some towards long-term investing. So this is just a case study. Isaiah, this lovely man, his AC stopped working. He's been saving on a monthly basis. and is trying to figure out, what's he gonna do to be able to fix his AC replacement that costs, $3,150, but he has $3,840 in his account. And so, imagine you're in Phoenix or somewhere extremely hot where you can't just open the window and let the ocean breeze come through. That AC is a very, important emergency that, would make sense for him to draw from. And so since he's been able to save, 100 to 200 on a monthly basis, that's something that he could replenish his emergency fund over time, but it would make sense to be able to pay that expense off right now since he has the cash to do it. So we're gonna go into the next topic, which is budgeting. So we just talked about financial goals, and the financial goals I want us to keep in mind is kind of like your North Star. So this is where you want to get to. This is what we're trying to accomplish. We can think about budgeting as a roadmap to get there, making sure that we are putting the money where it needs to be in order to reach that goal. Can I see a raise of hands? Who enjoys budgeting? One, kind of shaky, two.
I enjoy the other side of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I know we're talking about the same thing, it's just planning what comes in and where it's gonna go.
Yes, yeah.
Also, budgeting,
Yes.
budgeting is a necessary activity.
I'm doing it month to month.
There you go. And there's different types of budgeting. I know some people, when they think of budgeting, it's like, oh, I have an Excel sheet and I'm filling in numbers. I mean, that could be your example, or there's different apps that you could use. Or if your lifestyle is very simple and most of your bills are like on a subscription basis, well, you spend this much every month, or, like there's some clients we work with. I mean, their income is so large, and they live a very comfortable, not poor, but just like a standard lifestyle. Like if, when you bring in so much, your budgeting is just making sure that you don't go over, $4,000 a month. Like you don't have to count every penny when it comes to budgeting if what comes in is a lot larger, but also, if you have consistent things that you're paying for.
When my grandmother and mother was in our home, I just used an Excel sheet.
Mm-hmm.
At the top was the income and what everybody brought in
Mm-hmm.
every month, and then what all of our expenses was. And then it just shows you.
Where it's
I
going.
didn't budget for food, but whatever was left.
Yeah.
Was for food and, other stuff.
And it's crazy. One of the first things that we do with individuals that we're working with is we ask to submit a cash flow analysis, and people are really surprised. Maybe not the people in here, but other people are really surprised at how much they spend, on items of daily living. Because oh wait, did I really spend $500 on going out to eat this month, or was gas really $200? Oh, I thought it was just $100 this month. But when you go through your statements and you actually add everything up, or you see that monthly subscription that you forgot about that you haven't canceled, or you realize that you actually didn't get paid as much as you thought you were going. Those things. If you're not actually looking at it, it's very easy for things to fall under the cracks. And 85% of Americans who budget say it got them or kept them out of debt. And so, the key thing of, being in debt is that you owe, because you owe, I mean, however you got there. But if you're able to budget, where your money is going and where you can reallocate it, it's a lot easier to get or stay out of debt. This is just an example of a framework. There's a lot of different scenarios. The most important thing for a budgeting framework is to make sure that you're either saving money or you have money left over. Whatever percentages you use to get there, is how you get there. But this is an example, a very common one that the industry uses: 50, 30, 20. So 50 would be living expenses. That would be housing. A number that's often thrown around is your mortgage or rent should be under 30% of your gross income. In California, sometimes it's harder for people to have their mortgage or rent to be under 30%, but ideally that's kind of like the national recommendation. Transportation, groceries, utilities, insurance, all of the basic necessities, ideally you want to not be spending more than half of your half of your income or net income on that. Discretionary spending, so hobbies, charitable donations. For those who are inclined to give into the church, this would be where those funds would come from in the discretionary spending. And then savings. It's generally advised always, make sure that you pay yourself back. And so that would be putting money into your savings account, or reducing your debt, or investing it for a future goal. And then just back, any questions on the budget framework, or is it pretty clear?
I still think of, because take out my tithe in church first, I might put it there with the living, but you just take it out first, and then what's left, of course.
Was it, okay. So budgeting benefits, oh yeah.
So how, for folks who are just getting started with budgeting, what are kind of like the best tools?
To budget?
Yeah, to budget.
Yeah, I would say most banks nowadays have a budgeting tool built in to their apps. So I would recommend, if you ideally should have a bank, especially if you're like working.
Yeah.
But if with your bank, they often have a budgeting tool, and it's built into the software, of your account. And so I would say that is probably the best place to start
Easiest
first.
one.
That's the easiest, yeah.
Okay, when you say it's built into your account, is it like, because I see different things on my account where it'll say, this money right here is charitable, or groceries, or dining out, is that what you?
Yeah, that's an example of it. I use Allied Bank for the most part, and so like for my bank, you can put in like what your monthly expenses are each month, and it'll auto categorize expenses to see like, oh, you went over this amount for this month. Some of the larger banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, I think all of them have like budgeting tools. Or if you go to their website, they have resources that could point you to them. And then these are some of the benefits to budgeting. It just gives you greater financial independence, easier to be able to live debt-free, as we highlighted earlier. Reducing stress. Has anyone felt stress at some point in their life related to their finances? And you can imagine, part of that is because not necessarily a lack of budgeting, but because of the budgeting process, maybe that you're going to be short, or because you're not budgeting, you're unsure, you're unaware. It might change from month to month, and part of what we do, but also just this overall process of budgeting, is that it can be very uncomfortable. When people talk about finances, your shoulders can, start to tense up. You can get a cramp in your neck. You start, kind of closeting into your shell. And unfortunately, it's a natural response to talking about difficult or uncomfortable things. But if you don't bring the light to the dark space, if you don't wash the dirty hands, if you don't talk to that person about the uncomfortable situation, like, it's still going to be there. And so, at least on our end, like when we're talking about financial goals with clients, we're just trying to walk people through the difficult process to be able to know that someone's there with you. And when it comes to budgeting, it's, sure, it's uncomfortable. We get it. We can't necessarily make it uncomfortable, but we can like maybe de-stress it by using the terms, and no one's perfect. Even the richest people in the world can go broke if they don't manage their funds, properly. And so it's nothing that people should be ashamed of. People go through bankruptcy.
Unless you do it to your government too.
Yeah, people lose money, people go through bankruptcy, lose jobs, get foreclosed, out of their house. Those are things that are unfortunately a part of life. Or someone gets sick and they are unable to work. Stuff happens. But it's how you respond to those things that have happened that really makes the biggest difference on where your financial stature will be in the future. So implementing the budgeting method, this is for the 5-30-20, but really whatever your budgeting method is. The first step is review spending. So anyone in here, who's maybe taking on their personal goal to manage their funds better, or the budgeting process, the first step is just to review your spending. Even before maybe you get out your calculator and you put all the numbers in, just look, what are you actually spending? If you use multiple credit cards or cards, maybe you try switching to just one. If you are able to buy things in cash, that's one way to kind of slow things down and see it. Checkbooks kind of were slightly a little bit before me, but I have written some checks out. But on the back of it, you're able to put numbers and keep a record of it. So whatever works for you, whatever floats your boat, I would say do it. I personally like Excel sheets. It's kind of cumbersome, but you can get formulas and it gets spitted out, and it's just easier to track. But it takes a lot of time. So it's whatever works for you. So first one is reviewing your spending. The next one is allocating amounts. So that as our household, we spend $800 a month, maybe on average from groceries. Or one month it was $700, the next month it was $900. But when you go to your budget, you just allocate. This is how much we're going to spend for this month. And allocating amounts is looking at what your total living expenses are, understanding what your discretionary spending is and savings, and just putting the funds into those buckets to see what's, maybe in actuality, you're spending 50% of your income in discretionary spending. And can someone just shout out what discretionary is?
Whatever you want to spend it
That's one definition. Anyone else have
What did she say?
on. I said whatever you want to spend it on.
anyone
Spend it.
frivolous spending? Anyone else have additional definitions for discretionary?
It's usually gonna be the money that you have left over from your initial debts.
Yeah.
Monthly debts.
Like for me, like when I hear discretionary, I hear it's like it could fluctuate. It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
Like you have discretion to spend it. So
Or
if you have
Yeah.
or not spend it. So
Or
if you have $100 or that's too low. But discretionary should ideally be if you had to cut it out, you could cut it out.
Yeah.
When it gets
Your choice.
it's your choice.
Spend it.
Yeah.
Now, living expenses, you maybe have 30 days to pay your rent before you're kicked out, but you got to pay it. You need to pay your mortgage, or I don't know how long it takes for a house before they kick you out.
Can I say something?
Uh-huh.
Like you said, discretionary spending. If you want to stay in your apartment, you might as well not go out and keep that $50, $60 towards your rent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it comes in. So you could cut out stuff to live comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to pay yourself.
You do need to pay yourself, but I would say first things first is living expenses. So, I mean, because if you're paying yourself, but you still are home, outside, like, yourself wants to be in a house. So you got to pay whatever your living expenses are, whatever your monthly, the bills that are absolutely important. Netflix, is that discretionary? No. Is if you have an iPhone 16, but you could really get the iPhone 12. I mean, like ideally you don't want to have to do those type of things, but like if things actually came to that necessity, or if if we're looking at things on a larger budget, maybe you like to go to the Amalfi Coast, and that's a $5,000 trip that you're planning. Like maybe a trip up to Santa Barbara. Maybe maybe you could do $1,000 trip. Maybe you could go to Mexico and drive over. You don't necessarily have to spend that much. And then the next one is tracking. So after you've reviewed your funds to see how much you're spending on things, you allocate it correctly to understand if you're within that framework, and then you track it. You review your expenses monthly. I don't think you need to do it on a daily basis. You could do it weekly if you really love it and you have time, but I think monthly is a good sport. And really, when things become so consistent and regular, it could be quarterly or every 2 months, like if it's set.
For me, the budgeting is as simple addition and subtraction, what needs to be, what comes in, what needs to be paid. And for the saving, having more than one account or different banks, because if there's a savings and loan or somewhere that's hard to get to, I
Mhm.
put money there and that's my savings, and I don't carry the debit card with me. So
Mhm.
I'm watching where the money
Yeah.
is all the time.
And everyone has different ways that work for them, and so that's like what you need to do to be able to keep your funds secure. I'd highly recommend it. So one thing I always like to counsel though is that when we're doing financial plans, when we're budgeting, like we still do want to enjoy life, and so if that cup of Starbucks coffee brings you joy,
Jamba juice.
if that cup of Jamba Juice brings you joy, but you're worried about your monthly bills and all that, and now you're just despondent and a grumpy mood, and no one could talk to you. Just get like maybe not every day, but maybe once a week, or part of budgeting is to enjoy life today while also planning for the future. So there is a balance. Maybe it means your future goal takes a little bit longer, or it means that your future self sacrifices a little bit more today. But there is a balance in order to receive the things that you like. And so,
For recreation, that's where in your budget, you can have recreation or a lot of categories that would cover that.
in the discretion that you can allocate, what's most important now or in the future, whether it's a future savings goal to enjoy yourself or do something now. And then this is just some budget resources and tools. Like I mentioned, your credit union or bank would have tons of banking budgeting options, and then online, and then we also have things that we can use. The third topic, so we did financial goals was the first thing. We talked about budgeting, emergency funds. Before you go back, actually this is fine, but does anyone know what an emergency fund is? Or just shout out your...
When your engine blows out and you weren't expecting it.
Yes.
Unexpected.
Does-
You're ready for them.
Does anyone know by any chance like how to calculate what an emergency fund should be, or the recommended way to calculate it?
So much of
2 to 3 months of salary. Anyone else?
2 to 3 months of living expense, and I think they say just to get yourself started, try to have at least $1,000.
Yes.
That's like an achievable goal.
Mhm.
So I've heard that too, but real emergencies, like if you lose your job,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
live, all your living expenses.
Yes.
3 to 6 months worth.
So if we go to the next one, so on average, 1 out of 3 Black adults say they have a 3-month emergency fund. So it's it's not 1 out of every 10. So it's better, but ideally we would want it to be everyone, or 1 out of so the recommended is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So sometimes individuals, like I heard salary, that's what I thought it was initially, but ideally your salary should be more than what your living expenses are for the month. So if you're in a very tight crunch spot, I would say just what are your living expenses? And going back to that budgeting example that we use, it'd be 50%, so your rent or mortgage, transportation, heating, electric, water. Nowadays, cell phone is probably, is probably considered an emergency. Maybe Wi-Fi if you work remote, or just to, stay connected. But those are, some examples of living expenses that are almost non-negotiable.
Kyle, is discretionary spending included in
No.
the emergency fund?
Mm-mm. So if someone lost their job July 1st and, they had $1,000 in their monthly budget that goes to discretionary spending, in my mind, unless you already had a job lined up, that movie that you're going to go to, I would probably cut it out. If you're really I would say losing your job and not like having something immediately lined up could be, seen as an emergency state. And so ideally, you would cut out discretionary spending until that source of income had been replenished. 3 months is ideally for couples. So one person or like each person should, like 3 months is generally, fine for couples because the thought is that one person is still working. So, you're not completely shut out. But for like me, I'm, single, just a single source income for my household. My goal is 6 months. Like I want to be able to float myself, just living expenses. Not income replacement, not discretionary spending, and the $1,000 like starting point. I don't know if you guys have heard of Dave Ramsey. That's one of his recommendations. It could be as easy as like setting aside $5 a day, whatever you need to do to be able to, jumpstart your emergency fund. And just some examples of emergency fund things. Birthday gifts, not an emergency. Property taxes, although very important, or should know how much your property taxes are the year before.
No darn fooling around.
Yeah, sorry?
They're due in November,
Uh-huh.
December, they're late. No darn.
Oh,
Fooling, that's February, around is April or later here. No darn. I learned that from real estate.
I like,
So that's not an emergency.
that's not an emergency. I mean, it might become an emergency if you don't pay it, but
However, with those taxes, you do have up to 5 years to get them paid
But then
before
penalties are.
but
They
there's
do
penalties
add-
gonna come.
But
So
you're
as
get-
you're
but
saying, they're not an emergency, but you still have to plan to get.
you still need to,
But
yeah.
then you have to pay the penalties for doing
Yes,
that.
you do.
So we're trying to be,
Skip penalties.
we're trying to build wealth and not take it away from ourselves.
That's right.
Mhm.
And penalties take the wealth
And
away.
that would take away from our wealth.
Yes, especially if you're budgeting, like, it's one of the big hard things, like when people are budgeting, is like, oh, well, I only pay my insurance, twice a year, my car insurance twice a year. Well, if it's $600 for the first 6 months and then $600 for the next, well, budget $100 a month. Like that's what it actually costs you. And so, that's an example. Your property taxes, sure, it's only paid twice a year, but you live in that house 12 months out of the year. So you can split up your property tax over time.
It needs to become a part of your budget, and then you don't just, oh, this month I've got an extra $100.
Going somewhere.
You gotta pay $2,000.
I think that's a catch maybe that some people may struggle with.
Mhm.
Budgeting for it, allocating it, but then they're not remembering that
Yes.
it's coming
Mhm.
6 months later, and they're thinking that they're just got extra monopoly money.
I keep a 3-week folder,
Mhm.
my dividers, and everything is in there, and that's one of the sections. Property taxes is one, Cox is one,
Mhm.
I have SDG&E, and I have my water, everybody, and then my insurance.
Mhm.
So, and in the front, I have the little pieces of paper, and I line them up, January, February, March,
All the way
December
through.
that year, what's coming up
Mhm.
that month. And that's how I decide what's up.
And one of the ways for property taxes, for those who do not own yet, but are thinking of buying, you can always incorporate your property taxes into your mortgage, so it's
Yeah.
automatically.
Oh, that's
saved.
right.
Yeah, they offer that option.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's a great way, so it's like,
Yeah.
you don't have to think about it,
Mhm.
because you know, when it comes time, there's money there, and you can pay
Yeah,
it.
I
Or it's
forgot
gonna
what
be
you call
paid.
that fund, what you call that?
Impound.
Impound account.
Right.
I don't have that impound account anymore, so I do have to,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, but I'm just saying, for people who have not bought a house,
Yeah.
it's an option, if it's something that you don't wanna necessarily have to think about
Mhm.
each year.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
that's
if you're doing
always
impound
still
account,
think about it.
it's there, it's gonna be paid, you don't have anything to worry about.
Do they do that for property insurance too? Like you can add it to your or there's other things that you could
Yes.
You can do that.
add to your mortgage too.
But I'm not the advisor, but I would still be thinking about that, because that's money that you're gonna have to pay, whether it's in an impound account or not. I still would be thinking about it, because I'm trying to know what I have,
Mm-hmm.
and not just leave it to the mortgage company to know and do,
I know what you mean.
so that's what I'm saying.
They'll raise it when they get ready. You may
Yeah,
not
I
have
know
to raise
what's
it.
happening in my portfolio.
So one, tricky thing in the budget, there is, okay, you got your income, and then there's what you pay out, we'll say our bills. Some of the bills are your living expenses, you gotta pay your utilities, your car insurance, whatever, they're living expenses. And then there's the other ones that are debt reduction, they're bills. In 6 months, you're gonna pay off that $600 bill or whatever it is. I may have been bad advice, I don't know, but one friend today, we were talking about it, and she felt tight. And I said, well, you really don't have to pay that credit card bill if things are really tight. So if things are tight, we usually just get the
You gotta add the
absolute
numbers on it.
living expenses paid.
Yeah.
It might be bad, I mean, if you don't have.
That doesn't sound
that's-
too good.
I mean, if you don't have it, then you don't have it, but I would
You're
work
gonna
to
pay
have
interest,
it.
You're gonna pay interest on it.
Yeah,
And put your credit at risk.
yeah, you put your
And
credit
it's
out.
late.
Yeah.
So there's the consequences of saying that you don't have it, but then you wanna assess, because as you said, you create the budget. So if you see that there's something in that budget that really could be deferred, it should fall in that discretionary pile.
Or get more
That
cash.
means, or you need to have more income in order to pay those things.
Sell somebody bond.
But just the saying, let a credit card go
Is
because I
not-
want to still do something else,
No, this is
that's
a
probably
bad,
really
or
good.
a retirement lady.
And, you know, when you think about living expenses, you know, maybe you have a 2-bedroom and it's just you. Maybe, you know, it might be good to get a roommate or to go to a studio or, you know, maybe adjust where you live. You know, like those are non-ideal things, of course. No one wants to, you know, be put in those situations. But like if you flip that budget every which way, turn it inside out, and things still aren't, you know, equaling the way you want them to be, then maybe, you know, or it's getting another job, you know, working additional hours. So we're gonna take a slight detour. We're just gonna, a few questions, just kind of, you know, get people interactive. So money saving considerations. What is the average yearly cost for buying lunch every day? Can I get someone to shout out?
Okay, y'all got answers for that?
You don't buy lunch. If someone had to guess,
Let's say I'm $120 since it's 12 months, let's say $20
yearly
you spend
cost.
at least.
Every
No,
work
that's-
for every day.
That's
Every
one,
work
my
day.
bad.
That's
That's
about
fine.
$20.
I would say like
Literally.
15 times 5.
Like
Yeah.
$20
Anywhere
a
between $15 to $20.
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
We got some people, spot on.
About 4K?
The next one, well, they averaged it to $15 a lunch. So for the yearly cost is $3,000, almost $4,000 essentially. Yeah.
Really popular, because it's like, is it one day
$4,000
per month? Is it every day?
Almost $4,000 for the whole
That's for
year.
like a work week.
A work week, yeah, a work week. This is probably, you know, like, and 15, not including the tax, so, you know. Or the tip if you're, yeah.
Forcing you into a tip.
And if you switched it though, you just bought lunch twice a week, you know, then it drops, of course.
Or if you don't buy lunch,
Or if you don't buy lunch at all,
put that 50, 60 in an invested account.
even better.
I mean, if you're young, put that 15, 60 into your invested account, you'll get some.
You'll get it.
In the long run. Wow.
So cost, oh, could you go back? Okay, well, the cost of subscriptions.
There goes Amazon.
Netflix, $15 this month, next month, it's $25.
And the next one.
You can't share now.
Okay, and then next one, just one. Okay, so what's the cost of coffee? What's the cost of coffee? How much coffee does an average American pay?
They do it every day, it's at least $6.
$5 and $6.
$5 to $6 a day, if they do it at Starbucks.
We'll see. So a $5 cup of coffee daily would be about $2,000 yearly. So if you drank the coffee at work and brought leftovers from home, that's $6,000. You know that. If you drink coffee at work, so instead of buying
I don't drink
Starbucks,
coffee.
or don't drink coffee, or the Jamba Juice, or the Fiji water.
Down the double that, not once a week.
Next question. Go back. Okay. Well, the cost of food waste. So 1,600, the average family discards.
Wow.
I'm not
Um,
gonna lie, I toss away some food. but
and then
I
just
try not
one click. Okay, so smart investing. So that was just a slight detour just to kind of get us in the mindset of like, this is how much things actually cost. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, I went to Starbucks and really I've never had a $5 drink, but like 6 or 7 after everything is added in. But if I do that every day, well over 2,000. Thankfully, I don't like coffee, but I like the frappuccinos and I like the tea that they have, and none of that is free either. And so, this last portion for today are just some investment tips. And so, we talked about financial goals earlier. Financial goals, whether it's debt reduction, investing, savings goals. There's also estate planning or protection planning, but we just focused on those first 3. The second thing that we talked about was budgeting, making sure that we were spending less than what we were getting in order to reach our goals. The financial goal is the North Star. That's what we're looking to work towards. Budgeting is like one of the good tools to help us get there, but also smart investing, for that long-term goal. Budgeting alone won't suffice to get you to retirement. If you're leaving all that money in cash, you're saving, but you're not really investing towards reaching your goal.
At home won't grow it.
Keeping your money at home will not grow it. That's a product that would be an example of something that you could use.
It all depends on where you put it.
Is that like gambling?
No.
Okay,
Okay, so smart investing. So the essentials of smart investing. The first is keep your emotions in check. Keep your emotions in check. Does anyone remember, if you're paying attention to the news, does anyone remember Liberation Day 2025? Anyone remember what Liberation Day is? You mind?
I remember the news highlights.
Uh-huh.
I can't give you the details.
No worries. So Liberation Day this year was when Trump announced all the tariffs that he was announcing on all the countries. So if you were, watching your 401k and you saw it dropped 10,000, it's not 10,000, 10%, so depending on how much you have in it, what would be your first response?
Panic.
We can't say those words.
Yeah, it certainly didn't liberate.
It didn't liberate you, but if you were an emotional investor, sometimes it's like sell. All my money just went down. Let me sell it before it goes another 10%. COVID is another example. Funds went down. I'm just gonna pause to say, if you see all your money, one, you shouldn't make financial advice or decisions in a very emotional state. But honestly, when everyone's selling, kind of a joke, but really it's good. It's you should be buying, and when everyone's buying, you should be selling, because does anyone go to Ross or Marshalls? All those clothes you're buying are on sale. It's they marketed it at a higher price, and then they're selling it at a different price. Or maybe Macy's or JCPenney, sometimes they have their annual sale. In essence, when you see Apple is down 10%, in my mind, I hear, oh, Apple is on 10% discount. Or, ExxonMobil just lost a quarter of their value. Oh, shoot, I can buy it for 25% less, so, or if you hear, Tesla's up, they're not really up this year, but Tesla's up, it was down, but as an example, when you hear things are going up, maybe it could be a good sign to buy, or it could be a good sign to, oh, it's a little bit more expensive. The next one is know your risk tolerance. So one of the good things to do when investing, actually, I don't know if they could see me. Maybe I should stay on this side. When you're investing is to know your risk tolerance. So my personal sake, I'm a little bit more of an aggressive investor for my own personal money because I know I'm 30, I have a long time horizon, I feel pretty comfortable. Now, if I have to buy something next year, I'm not going to be aggressive with it, but generally speaking, I know, that's where I'm at. But I know some people, it's like, they will freak out if, their 10,000 went to 9,950 because it went down $50. And if you're kind of, squishy or, just like you're very nervous, like then you're probably more conservative. If you're, in between, it's like moderate. It's like there's different levels. But the key thing is just to know your risk tolerance, how much risk you're willing to take, because that will dictate the investment solutions that you would take or that would be recommended to you.
So it is like a gamble.
If you want to use that phrase, you could. I think, like gambling is, I mean,
50-50.
sorry?
No, I was saying it's 50-50.
It's 50, I mean, like, when I think of gambling, it's like you're going to a casino and like there's not no probability, but like it's rare. Generally speaking, like for investments, there's a chance of it losing money, but would you say buying a house is a gamble? Like your house could be worth less if you go down. Buying, taking a job over, halfway across the country could be a gamble because they could fire you 2 months after you move there. So generally speaking, if you're mindful either on yourself or working with someone, you're not gonna necessarily pick it's not gonna be the go-to to pick investments that have high risk, which is where the risk tolerance comes into play. There's some things that have either never lost value or rarely, like they stay pretty stable.
Like for instance, energy.
Energy.
You gotta have lights, you gotta have.
They're probably never gonna,
So if you invest in energy, stock may fluctuate, but it's gonna be there. And when the quarterly, if you want, you can reinvest your dividend. You can take your dividends out, but you can reinvest them, and that makes your.
It helps to go up. Energy is a very good example of like, an industry that you can invest in that's not as directly tied to how the stock exchange is doing.
AT&T, because we used to have the bills on it. We invest so much in it, we might as well.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, and so another one is embracing diversification and asset allocation. So diversification, there used to be this really good slide that we had, but imagine like a 6-plane window. So you have a window that is, divided into 6 parts. That's an example of like diversification in the sense that if you live on a golf course, would you rather have a single plane window or one with 6? What'd you say?
6.
One with 6, because if something hits it, whether a golf ball, a loose rock or something, you don't have to replace the entire window, it's just that one pane.
I did not know you were going that route. I
Oh.
just mean I wanted 6 places I can see through.
Oh. No. Yeah. Just more so like, dividing, like even these windows, like, if something, God forbid, something happened, you don't have to replace the entire. And so that's an example of diversification, or, not putting all your eggs in one basket, or if you have, 3 kids, hopefully 2 of them turn out right, or, but ideally all of them, but, that's a form of diversification. And then rebalancing regularly. So, once you create an investment strategy and you know what your goals are, sometimes some stocks or mutual funds or bonds go up or down, but rather than just like letting it sit for, a year or 2 without changing it, you just rebalance it so you get it back in accordance. Any questions? If you could go back on these are just like principles, but anyone have questions on the general principles of investing?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask about, you mentioned mutual funds, but index funds versus mutual funds, is that in the same category, or is index funds safer than
I don't want to use like the term safer or less safer. I mean, because it depends on, a mutual fund is just a type of investment. So
It's a lot of different windows.
yes, and an index fund is tied to an index, but you know that index is based off of multiple companies or stocks. So in essence, I don't want to say it's the same thing because they're different, but those are both types of investments that are based off of underlying securities. So I wouldn't, to answer your question, one's not necessarily safer or less safer than the other. Just looking at the category, what's more important is what's under the hood.
So are you going to go over the sort of different buckets of potential investments that will make up the diversification?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna go over the securities, or no, not the type of investments that go under it. More so the accounts that you could use. Yeah, I'm probably more so gonna go over accounts. I could go over those, but like it's, and I could share it, but like I don't have slides on it because it's a little bit hard to like fully conceptualize without like looking at specific ones. But I'll answer. Yeah, I can go into like mutual funds versus the different types.
Are you gonna go into like Roth and all those stuff?
Yes, that I'm gonna go into different types of accounts.
Okay.
What is rebalance regularly?
So let me find an example of rebalance. So So say you have very simple breakdown. Say you have 4 stocks. Each stock is just a quarter of your portfolio. 3 stocks go up, but 1 stock goes down. And so it's like worth less. In a quarter or maybe at the end of the year, you're going to look at your portfolio and say, well, I still value all of them, but they're not balanced anymore. So you're going to sell some to buy the one that's down so that it's rebalanced. Or maybe a good, more like a real life example is the air in your tires. Like it can get out of sync, and so you need to refill the air in one of your tires so that it's balanced again. Or so that's what a rebalance. It's just like things are out of whack, and so it's putting it back in proportion.
As soon as I sell it, it's gonna go up.
Most people out there have some combination of stocks and bonds.
Is the stuff
And
upstairs?
based on your risk tolerance, you have a ratio of stocks to bonds.
Thank you.
And sometimes your stocks do really well. And so you want to keep the same percentage. Like
Yes,
for
really
Marco,
good.
for Marco and myself, we are 60-40. So 60% stocks, 40% bonds. But if the stocks do really well, then the stocks are going to go up in value. The bonds are going to do too well, so they'll go down. So at the end of the year, maybe you end up with 70-30. And so then at the end of the year, you still want to go back and rebalance.
So
You
it's
wanna
back to
sell some
640.
stocks,
Yeah.
Buy some bonds, so you get back to 60-40.
And
What's
it's
the bond again?
a bond is basically debt. So a company or the government could issue debt, and so they're borrowing money from you, and then they repay it back in the form of a bond.
I can ask, like me, at my age, as far as buying bonds, it's not a good idea, is that right?
No, I wouldn't say.
Okay, because of my age.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the
That's a
type of.
long time thing.
No. They have short-term bonds. Yeah, they have short-term bonds. And honestly, like if you were just saying a blanket thing, most people would probably just say because of your age you should buy bonds. But I wouldn't go blanket because not every bond is good. There's junk bonds. You have to look at the ratings. Also, there's tax implications. Like, if you're a higher net worth individual, maybe you want to get municipal bonds for, So like, the type of bond matters, and I wouldn't say, that bonds are bad because of your age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. In general, I think.
In general.
Correct me if that's right. What you want to do as you're getting closer to retirement or into retirement is to come less and less on stocks.
And more in bonds.
And more on bonds.
The risk.
Because the risk on your stock, because your
Time horizon.
Time horizon is short, right? So stocks in general, I think the average goes up 4% a year, But if you have a really bad year and you need to retire in 2 years, then, you're right, and so you as your age changes, as you get closer to retirement, then you wanna, keep that.
Adjust it.
You know, adjust the portfolio.
Okay.
Rebalance.
Go back, reassess.
Reset. Let's see. Okay, and then the next slide. So this is just looking at making savings a priority. So this is an example of you have a $1,000 initial investment, and then I believe they're investing $100 a month for 30 years. So after the 30 years, you would have invested $36,000 additionally. And just looking at only 5%, average income or average appreciation, which is decent, if you're paying someone, you should probably be getting more, but like 5% is very decent, 5% is a very decent, achievable thing to do. At the end of it, you've earned in interest $50,000, after 30 years. So, time is the biggest contributor to this, but it's just an example of the benefit of of having time on your side, and then also consistently investing. But this is just an example of the power of interest. And it's so amazing to see it in the terms of like how your investments can grow. But just on the flip side, I want to say it also works the same thing with debt. So if you are continually adding, $100 to your credit card and not paying it off, like, just in the reverse, the interest is going to eat you up. So.
Well, I think too, think about it that if you think about what the interest rate of a credit card is, if it's like
Wow.
27% interest, but you've got $1,000 over here, but you've got $1,000 over here, at 5% growing,
You
you're
can't.
still now at a 20% loss
Mhm.
because this credit card interest is,
So pay it off.
eating up
Is eating up.
that 5% interest. Yeah.
Which, to your point, is really like why one of the biggest things, why we spent a lot of time emphasizing budgeting and understanding your financial goals at the beginning, is because people will come like, oh, I really want to invest, but then you have like a huge credit card balance. And I would say you'd be very hard pressed to find investments that will outpace the interest on a credit card. If you're paying 20% plus 30% on a credit card debt, that needs to be one of your first priorities before doing like additional investing. Just because mathematically it doesn't work out, whatever day of the week it is.
So basically, work on getting out of debt is what I hear you saying, and then work on investing.
Yes. Now,
Don't add to your debt, or you'll never be able to do this saving priority thing again.
yes, and I do want to highlight that there are different types of debt. So student loan debt, generally speaking, has a very, very low interest rate. Same thing with, if you refinance in like 2020 and your mortgage is like 2% or 3%, like, you can still invest while paying off your loan. Really, you should, invest. The interest on your debt really makes a big difference on whether you should be investing or paying it off. So, for instance, I had a client who wanted to buy a car, and her credit union was going to give her like 1 or 2%, like something ridiculously low for her interest rate. And so like we just showed her as an example that like if you were just to invest, on a regular basis rather than paying off your credit card, paying off the car loan, like you would end up with more money at the end of it. Because the car loan was so low in comparison to a very safe, conservative amount that you could get in investing. But that kind of plays into like behavioral finance and what's a priority to her, so she wanted to pay it off. But it just really depended on what the interest rate is for your debt and versus the investments that you have. So I know that was a kind of a lot of like weeds that we went through, but any questions on like high level questions on like what we just went through on interest?
There's a question from Zoom going back on some of the average things that we were talking about, and the question was, what's the average dollar amount for groceries. So
Oh.
within that, household,
Yeah,
household expenses.
groceries should be within the 50% of your, like, should lie within that 50% of your budget. I don't have an exact amount because that depends on how much you eat, if you shop at Walmart versus Whole Foods.
Or if you eat $500 steak versus $100.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Chicken leg.
size of your family. So that varies quite a bit. And then the next slide. So this is a really good one just to show them the cost of waiting. So we have two friends. First one is Piper and Alex. They both have a 30-year time horizon. So let's say they're planning for retirement. Piper, she is going to invest $100 a month for 20 years. But then she's going to stop investing. So she's going to invest $100 for 20 years and then stop. And then she's getting an 8% rate of return, which is very average. And then Alex, same time horizon, 30 years. But she's like, you know what, I want to travel these next 10 years, or maybe she has something else that's a little bit more important. So she's going to wait 10 years to start investing. But when she starts, she's going to play catch up. She's going to do $200 a month versus the $100 a month that Piper is investing. Between Piper and Alex, or who thinks Piper will end up on top?
She will.
She will.
And who thinks Alex will end up? Alex is investing twice as much as Piper is.
Oh,
But he started late.
But she's only 10 years though, 10 out of the 30 years.
Wait. Was that?
So both of them are investing for 30 years. We want to see who's going to have the most money in 30 years. Piper is they're both only going to invest for 20 years. Piper will do it the first 20, and she's only going to do $100 a month. Alex is going to double it, but she's going to delay her investing by 10 years. It could be the same as well. So I'll ask again, who thinks Piper will have the most money at the end of the 30 years?
I think Piper will.
And then who thinks Alex will have more money towards the end? Okay.
She stopped investing.
Huh?
Alex stopped investing.
No, Alex just started late, but she still invests for 20 years.
It says no investment for the first.
For the first 10.
10
so
years.
they didn't start at the same time.
Uh,
So they tried to make up.
She's trying to, yeah.
Oh, okay, so it balanced out because she didn't do any investment for the last 10 years.
Mhm. So Piper's initial investment will only be $24,000 versus Alex, or what's the next slide? Alex, her total investment will be $48,000, so more than double. But because she started earlier, she'll have $131,000 versus Alex, who will have $118,000.
Yep. Piper
So
from the
California has more.
Go girl.
So just the difference of starting earlier makes earlier and less. So really, time is like. I think some say like time is like the eighth world wonder, you know.
Yeah, because she started early.
She started earlier.
And then she stopped.
Mhm.
So while she stopped,
It's still
her
growing.
money is building her.
Yeah.
She lost, she gained. Let's just say that. While Alex started later, and he or she, whatever you do,
Mm-hmm.
just started now. While Piper was already making money, and then she continued later. Is that what it was?
Yes, and even though like they both technically did have a 30-year time horizon, but really Alex only invested for 20 years. She didn't like, I mean, they both like mentally were starting at the same time, but because she did nothing for 10 years, that $0 grew to $0 until she started investing.
Yeah, Piper had something that grew.
I got it.
In the 90s, someone offered us the mutual funds. It was $25 a month. I couldn't see it. It was like I should have started when I was 20, so I wouldn't do it then. And so now, it has went by.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, like you mentioned earlier, I got nervous and afraid years ago, and I had invested in the stock market, but knowledge is good. But, and I was told, though, it's like, don't be watching the stock market every day. But I was. And so, it seemed like, just when I got in here, it's just when things went down, and I just kept, I thought, oh, no.
And that would have been the perfect time to buy. You should have said, oh, yes, yes, yes.
And right
Yeah.
now, if I had kept that, and so I just said, no, take my money out and I'm just gonna be in CDs, which was, some advice I got from some of the older members at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that's where I went. That's what I
Yeah,
would do.
and CDs
But I
aren't
would've been pretty
terrible.
good right now. I mean,
Yeah.
Really.
CDs aren't terrible, but you're, you know, if you don't need the money for 30 years, I can't see a CD in the world that will get you something, you know, that, you know, from even something very basic, you know, investing in, so.
Do they last, like, say you have a mutual fund and you are paying them $20 a month, 25 or something, then you say, I can't do it, stop it for the next year or two, does it just sit and grow, or does that close it up if you don't continue to do every month?
Yeah, so assuming you're referring to like a brokerage account that you're putting $25 in to buy the mutual fund, whatever you purchase is still yours, you know, and it should, if the mutual fund goes up in value, then your investment goes up. If it goes down in value, then it goes down. But just because you stop purchasing investment security doesn't mean that your investments will go away unless it's like something else. There's other, examples where it could. And then the next one. So now we can go to the next one. Now we're just gonna look at the different types of accounts. So retirement accounts. So this is like an employer-sponsored plan with employee contributions. So traditional, you know, like 401ks that you're putting money into, or anything, or 403bs if you work at like a nonprofit, employer-funded plans. I think they're. What'd you say?
Those were the best.
Those were the best, unless it went default, but those were the best, you know, assuming that the company was still solvent, which are almost non-existent unless you find a government job. And even still, I think a lot of them have like transitioned to like, you know, a hybrid formula. And then IRAs, which you can open up on your own with some income restrictions, but you know, that's a retirement account that you own for yourself.
Is that IRAs are the one that I think the limit is 7,000? Is that the one?
Yeah, it goes up, you know, from time to time.
The minimum, I think.
Not minimum, the maximum.
Maximum.
But after a certain age, I want to say 55 or maybe, I think it's 55, you could do 8,000. Yeah. And then the next slide. So these are just the types of accounts. So we're closing out. Just want to show you, these are different types of accounts that you can put your money into, and there's different advantages to each one. Annuities are, you know, forms of insurance products, but essentially it's kind of like a guarantee. Like once the annuity is activated, it's more or less like you're going to get a set payment for your lifetime or for a period of time. The next one is brokerage accounts. So these are like a very traditional, straightforward. These are type of accounts that you can put money in, where you could buy mutual funds, stocks, bonds, ETFs. Anyone, for the most part, can open up a brokerage account. And then how investments are taxed. This is something that was very key. I know yesterday when I was with the young adults, someone had asked about a Roth IRA. And so, you know, maybe some of you guys have heard about Roths or 529 plans or HSAs, health savings accounts. I just want to kind of go over a very high level, like how these accounts work and their benefits. So the IRS kind of treats their investments from a tax perspective in 3 different ways: taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free. A taxable account would be an example that money goes in after it's been taxed. So you get your paycheck or however you earn your money, and then you invest it. And then if it grows or you earn money on it, you still pay taxes on it. So it's like the most taxable account, but it's the most liquid. So you have the most flexibility to be able to pull the money in and out at your own preference. The next one is a tax deferred, which should be like, I think there might be one more click. Okay, a tax deferred is like a traditional retirement account. So the money goes in tax free. So if you are making $100,000 a year and you put in $20,000 into your 401k account, when you go to pay your taxes at the end of the year, you're only owing on $80,000. So you reduce your tax liability for the current year because the government is essentially rewarding you for investing in your retirement. So you don't pay taxes on that 20. You earned 100,000, but you put 20 into your retirement account, so you don't pay taxes on it now. Also, it grows tax free. So if you own that mutual fund and it made money, if your advisor or you sold in and out of your retirement account, like you're not paying money on that growth as long as it's in the account. But then at the point of distribution, that's when you pay income level taxes on those funds. So you didn't pay it at the point of inception, but you do pay it at the end when you pull it out. And then a tax-free account, you pay taxes on it now, but when you pull it out, it's tax-free. So a Roth IRA, some employers have Roth 401ks or Roth 403bs, and so essentially, or a 529 plan. So the money that you put into the account has already been taxed. Also, cash value life insurance is another example. You've already paid taxes on it. It grows tax deferred. So as it's growing, you're not paying taxes on it. And then when you pull it out, it's tax free. So essentially, I would say all three of them are very important. I wouldn't necessarily say that like you should only have one. They're kind of like a three-legged stool, or like it's good to kind of balance it out. But there's benefits to each. If you are in a higher tax bracket now than you will be in retirement, if you're in a higher tax bracket now, so you're paying more in taxes now, it would be probably a little bit more ideal to use a tax deferred account because you can reduce your tax liability today. If you just know like you're big baller, you're making $600,000 a year, but retirement you'll be moderate, you're not spending that much. You should reduce your tax liability now because you can afford to pay it in the future. A lot of people probably kind of fit into the other category where your taxes will probably be either the same or maybe slightly more in retirement because generally speaking taxes don't go down, although they might with depending on who's in administration. But generally speaking, if you look back, taxes go up over time. And so if you're able to reduce what you pay in the future by having tax-free income, you could take the hit now and pay for it, and then it also goes tax-free. If you think about it, another way maybe to rephrase it is if you have $1 million in a Roth account and you have $1 million in a traditional 401k account or tax-deferred account, when you pull that $1 million out from your normal retirement account, you probably have $600, $650, depending on if you still live in California, because you're gonna have to pay income level taxes on it. So whatever you owe to the IRS and the state will be taken out of that $1 million over time. Whereas if you've accumulated $1 million in tax-free account, in a Roth account, you get to spend $1 million. What you see is what you get as long as you take it out after retirement. So there is value to having each. But also the taxable account, maybe you want to start investing now, but you don't want, there's a big purchase that you might have in 10 years, but that's before retirement. You don't necessarily want to tie all of your money up in a retirement account if you have, additional money to spend and save, because you can't use it until you're, I believe, 59 and a half, without penalties. You could take it out, but then you're paying taxes and 10%, and it's not wise.
But also with the tax-free accounts that you mentioned, you can withdraw for housing, to buy a house, and for education.
Yes.
Without being taxed on it.
Yeah, so for the 529 plan, as an example, that one is specific for education, and then for the retirement accounts as well, but there's limits. So everything that you put in is not fully available for housing and or education. So if you're saving for housing and education, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to use those accounts for that. But if you are going to be buying a house or need education and you have money there, you can use it. But there's, I wouldn't say that should be your first place to go. And then I think maybe just like 1 or 2 slides left. Oh, well, strategies to reduce your taxing, give to charity, municipal bonds, selling at a loss, or selling your house. These are just like some strategies that you could use to reduce your taxes. And next steps. We went over a lot. I don't expect, I mean, anytime someone presents, you never, gather and retain everything. But I hope you either took notes or you maybe say something on your phone that like 2 or 3 things. Like if I tell myself this, like when I go to workshops, like if I can just implement 2 things that I learned from that presentation and consistently do it, I know that it'll pay dividends over time. But also if there's anything that you want to review or if you have questions,
The previous slide.
if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Part of the work that I do, as an advisor, and then just my personal, purpose of seeing life is just to be able to connect with people, and so our office, we offer like free consultations, so like there's no charge to me, and then also we generally speaking, we'll do free financial plans. I mean, more or less, we'll be able to give you a workshop of like. These are your financial goals, and this is what it would take in order to get it. So we would meet for a consultation and then work on a plan based off of that initial meeting. And we can, the initial meeting, can kind of tell a lot as far as like what type of plan you need and how in depth it would be. Both of those would be at free of charge. And then, of course, if we were to move forward, then all those questions would go there. But
I've been to other financial places and they offer this service like you're saying, and then they also try to get people to join and become financial advisors. Is yours like that?
no, that's I don't know who you're talking about, but that sounds like a pyramid scheme. Or multi-level marketing.
Everybody can be a financial trader.
Yeah, no. So, and that's one of the reasons why, like, at the beginning, I like listed all of like the certificate or like the series that I have. They're FINRA, which is like the national and state level organizations that monitor financial advisory relationships, and then also like the financial advice that people give. So, no, I don't want all of my clients to be financial. I mean, like, I'm not trying to sell them that. No, then no. In their system, you get more money. But yeah, no. It's so there is a cost, like when you do services, but all that's like shared up front, before anything is purchased. And whether you're working with like Fidelity or an advisor or your personal one at work, someone's getting paid. No matter whether it's like free or built in, like someone's always getting paid. But we always just make sure that you're aware of what the costs are.
Is there a minimum amount that you expect your clients to have to invest on what you to manage?
Yeah, the bare minimum is $5,000, the bare minimum, but it really depends on like what someone's goals are. Like to open up an account, I would say is like $5,000, but like that's not like. There's other,
Is that when you're just starting investing?
Sorry?
Did you say when you're just starting?
When you're just starting, yeah. So if someone like was just starting, like we have products that you could enter in at $5,000. But when we would do a consultation, like I would look and see whether like what's the best solution, because like we're not necessarily built for everyone. The products that we have and the services and like the cost is not necessarily for everyone. What I would say is that you don't necessarily have to have any money to work with us, because I'm a financial advisor, and so one of the most important things that we do is financial planning. And so you could have, you have money because you're living, it's coming in and out, but like the planning part is also a service that we provide even if we don't invest. But if you want to invest, $5,000 is like a minimal starting point. And then the more money you have, like the more tools that you have available. You know, it's like I can't offer, you know, everything that, you know, someone with 5,000 that, you know, if they had $500,000 or 100 or something like that. So, yeah. But I mentioned earlier, I work with like, you know, young people just starting off. I have tons of friends who, you know, they just opened up accounts. It's like we're building something. So like I definitely want to make sure it's clear that it's not it's not financial advice is not like just for people who live in La Jolla and you know you know or you know have a yacht at Coronado like or you know it's financial advice is for everyone and if you know most people have an advisor even if they're just working a regular job. Your 401k plan should have a financial advisor attached to it. They might not answer every question outside of a retirement plan, but you know, advice should be available and is available to everyone. And so if there's a question that I can't answer, point you in the direction, or if there's resources that we can't provide, point you in the right direction as well.
And the reason why I asked that question is because, like, for me, I don't have a 401k and I'm not working.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, some of the young people or people here that are working and they still have that income with that match and things like that. That's why I asked about if you have money though.
Yeah.
If you have money and you want to invest to grow it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, outside 5%.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I was asked that for.
Yeah, and definitely have resources and tools or investments that are open for everyone, you know, and so, yeah. Any other questions before we close? No? All right, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Here's my information. If you guys have any questions or know anyone who might have you yourself or know someone who might be interested, please let me know. Be happy to work. I used to work I've been with the Ameriprise for 3 years. I used to work in Century City, which is just like a business district in LA. And this new team that I'm on in Pasadena has been about a year. And you know, something I didn't mention earlier, but what I really do appreciate about this new team, both at Ameriprise, but this newer team, most of us are Christians or like faith-based. And so our goal is really just like to be able to help people with whatever their financial goals are. A lot of our clients are multi-generational. So, you know, the founder has worked with the grandparents, the parents, now working with the grandchildren or extended family. And so, because I know most of you guys, like it's also kind of very in line with like what we do, just being able to help people reach their financial goals. And especially in our community, it's like demystify finance and the fear that's often associated with it. So thank you guys so much for your time.